Our first speaker. When you think about public relations or PR, you probably think about external communication. After all, it is aimed at public audience. But PR can also face internally. In the business world, internal PR is often called employee engagement. Our guest speaker today is Matthew Douglas, DTM. With more than 2 decades of experience in marketing and PR, Matthew is joining us today from PR Masters, and he is here to share with us how to use internal engagement, especially in a volunteer organization like our Toastmasters. Our clubs don't have employees, so what motivates us to show up? In a volunteer organization, engagement takes additional prominence. It is particularly critical for volunteer retention. The more connected volunteers feel to their organizations, the more likely they are to remain in their roles. Matthew's speech is from the Pathway Engaging Humor, Level 2. The project is connecting with your audience. His goal is to keep us engaged, and his speech timing is 8 to 10 minutes. The format of this speech is 8 to 10 minutes speech, followed by a Q&A section. We have a total of 15 minutes, and our timer, Marcy, is on the ball and in know of our timing. Please put your hands together and join Matthew Douglas.
Thanks very much. How many people, show of hands, how many people follow sports? Are you sports folks? Sorta? Well, even if you're not a sports person, if you know someone or love someone who is, one of the things you'll know is that sports is all about numbers, right? There's points and rebounds and shots on goal, those kinds of things. And the statistics that always drives me nuts is they'll say, since 1950, these teams have met, for 72 times, and Team A wins 80% of the time on the first meeting. And you're like, the players weren't even alive when that original statistic was starting to be recorded. So how meaningful is it, right? Really, the only thing that's meaningful is what this current team is. And current teams are usually only good for about a season, right? Because players roll off, new coaches roll on. So it's just it's a whole new group of people. In many ways, your Toastmasters club is just like a sports team. You have roster spots to fill, and you have a duration of time where you'll have people in those coaching roles, your sponsor. You'll have people on your board in certain roles. You'll have people attending meetings, and then you go to collect dues and it starts all over again. So if you look at PR, right, it's about creating awareness, but in many ways, you start at zero every 6 months as you try to get your, X number of members, and as you try to figure out how you're going to fill those roster spots. And my supposition is that the easiest members that you have to fill those roster spots are the members you already have. So then the role of PR is, how do we keep those members engaged? If there's one big takeaway that I hope you have today, I hope that it is that I changed the way that you see your club meetings. All right, so I have a device to help you think of the big idea, IDEA, and the first I is involvement. So for involvement, can everybody put your fist up? We're going to get involved. There we go. There was a survey that was done by the United Way. United Way is a big volunteer organization, and their aspiration was to better understand their volunteers in this survey. What they wanted to understand was why volunteers left. And there were 3 principal reasons that were given. One is the volunteers felt underutilized. The second one is that the organization could feel impersonal. And the third one, which is a pretty big one, is they didn't see the connection between one day's work and another. by a show of hands, how many people think that this has large application to Toastmasters? Yeah, okay. Cool. So, one of the things that I firmly believe is that most Toastmasters think about our meetings like this. Everybody do this? Yeah. So each week we have a meeting, right? And you can stack those across just like books on a shelf. And those volumes constitute our year. And what we want to do as Toastmasters is we want all of our members to think about our meetings like this, like a salmon or something, right? We want them to be connected. In order to get them connected, you need to have volunteers who are engaged, and in order to be engaged, they have to feel valued, right? So as Toastmasters, our goal is to get volunteers to be involved. All right, so the D in idea is dialogue. Everybody go like this. We're going to listen. There was a Pepperdine study that was done in 2019, and it was aimed purely at trying to understand internal communication inside an organization. And their supposition in that study, their hypothesis, was that you would be able to have higher levels of organizational identification in volunteers if you had better internal communication. And that proved out. The way that they were able to figure out that organizations were doing that is the organizations were reaching out to volunteers and asking them what matters, asking them about their specific goals, and then working to align those specific goals with the goals of the organization. So what I'm telling you is that as a club, you all need to listen to each other and talk to each other, and you need to ask people what their goals are. And then you need to parrot that back to them. Because that gets us to our third area of idea, which is engagement. Hand on your heart. So for engagement, what you want to do is you want to design a volunteer engagement program. I'm on several boards for several nonprofits, including in Toastmasters. And one of the things that doesn't come up as often as it probably should is the term volunteer, right? We think about ourselves as Toastmasters, right? Or as the roles that we have. But we don't necessarily think about ourselves as volunteers, and we're totally volunteers. And you don't want just volunteers, you want engaged volunteers, right? Our aspiration is engagement. In order to do that, we need them to believe that their mission is aligned with the mission of the organization. And that brings us to the fourth part of idea, which is addition. I'll lift up. So with addition, if you think about the mission statement of Toastmasters or the mission statement of this particular club or any club that you belong to, what you want to do is you want to go one level down and you want to remind people about the accomplishments that they have accomplished and how those feed into the larger mission of the entire organization. Essentially, what you're saying is you matter, you contribute to the cause, right? You are adding new skills and you are gaining friends and relationships, and there are all kinds of things that you're doing. And what we want to do is we want to hone in on the things that particularly matter to you. So, in summary, what we're looking for here is to have together for this club's success is to have an idea. What we want to do is we want to align the planning and goals of the organization as a whole with the individual goals of our members. And the way that we can do that is by talking to them and asking them pointed questions. What does success look like for you? They might say, I want to give a couple speeches, or I want to grow in this area, or I'd like to find a mentor, whatever that is. And then what we can do as a as a totality, as a group or as a club, is that we can help them understand that their individual participation isn't this, right? It's this, and it's part of a narrative story that is all of our stories as a club. Anyway, so what I would suggest would be to develop a survey and understand from people whether they're looking for leadership opportunities, whether they're looking for getting through a particular portion of a pathway or giving a number of speeches, whether they're looking to have fun, they want to do contests and be on the international stage like your former member, or whether they're looking for professional development. Overall, that can help you to develop your big idea and to ensure that the easiest members you keep are the ones you already have.